Hello and welcome to our discussion about ASHA certification. So why do you want to gain certification? Most private practice and hospital settings, as well as an increasingly larger number of schools, require that you hold certification. You can also apply for state licensure across many states in the United States. And because in reimbursement for both federal programs and private depends on having certification, it makes you eligible for those kinds of jobs. And also the possibility of receiving salary supplements in the school settings. Some of the states and school districts do offer these salary supplements to those with certification, and the employers need you to have certification so that the clients can be reimbursed. And it also allows you to mentor and supervise clinical fellows after completing a minimum of 2 hours of supervised training. So soon you will be the person who will be asked to be a mentor either for a practicum student or for a CF student. We now have an online clinical fellowship reporting process. So when you apply for your clinical fellow, you'll have a CF portal, and this decreases the processing time, and you can also track your CF in real time. The fellow and the mentor use the system to submit and verify CF reports. So you submit them online, and they are sent to the mentor, who verifies the information that you have submitted. This includes the duration, the setting, the hours per week, and then they answer 7 questions about the final segment of the CF report. So, this is ASHA's pathway to practice as an SLP. First requirement is a master's degree from an accredited university, and that is LSU's program. So our program meets the accreditation standards of ASHA, plus the accumulation of 400 hours of supervised practicum. And once again, if you've completed our master's program, then we've assured that you have those hours. So after January 1st, 2020, you have to go by the 2020 standards. You can follow that link on the PowerPoint to see the full version of the standards. Basically, LSU has prepared you for the 2020 standards. Added in the 2020 standards are hours in speech sound production, fluency disorders, literacy, and feeding, pediatric feeding especially. You're also encouraged to have interprofessional and interprofessional practice. Note also that beginning in 2020, during the certification maintenance interval, you have to have earned at least 30 required certification hours, and you have to include hours in ethics. So this is something that you will do after you've graduated. You must maintain certification by continuing to get continuing education hours. Okay, starting in 2020, clinical supervisors and clinical fellowship mentors have to have a minimum of 9 months practice before you can supervise anybody else, and 2 hours of professional development in the area of supervision post-certification. So you want to make sure that your CF mentor meets these criteria. They have to now take this coursework in supervision even after they're certified in order to serve as a mentor. And then be sure that you meet the criteria before you agree to take on a student in practica or as a CF after you've acquired certification. They're also considering an English language proficiency to be added to the standards. So be sure to keep a track of your ASHA updates. So I'm sure that there will be further changes to the standards in the next several years. All right, so you've got your master's degree, you've got your 400 hours of supervision. For most of the people in our program, you've passed the praxis exam with a score of 162 or above. If you did not pass the praxis exams, say you did a thesis and did not yet have to take the praxis exam, then you must pass that, and the scores that you receive on your praxis exam have to be sent to ASHA directly from ETS. So you cannot just submit a copy of your scores. It must be passed no more than 5 years prior to the receipt of your ASHA certification application, so it has to be a current praxis score. So if you haven't taken the praxis, you can visit that link on ASHA's website and it'll talk about the praxis score. All right, so after passing the praxis score, you're eligible for your clinical fellowship year, which is 36 weeks minimum. There's a complete ASHA certification handbook, and there's the link to that handbook. It'll tell you all of the rules and regulations. All of this information can be found on ASHA's website, so there's a link to the Certification Clinical Fellow, and some of the topics are ASHA certification, how to apply for speech path certification, certification maintenance, or the kinds of continuing education you have to have after graduation, the praxis exam, and the clinical fellowship year. All right, so let's look at this little beginning video from ASHA.
Congrats! You've earned your master's or doctoral degree in speech-language pathology from a CAA-accredited program. Now it's time to complete the next step towards certification, the Clinical Fellowship Experience. The Clinical Fellowship Experience is the transition period between being a student enrolled in a CSD program and being an independent provider of speech-language pathology services. It includes a mentored professional experience after the completion of academic coursework and clinical practicum. Upon successful completion of the clinical fellowship and certification application process, you'll become a certified member of ASHA and hold the Certificate of Clinical Competence in Speech-Language Pathology. There are 10 steps to keep in mind while going through your clinical fellowship experience, and we have some tips to get you through the process.
Once again, all information is on the ASHA website. So they have another page that's a guide to ASHA Clinical Fellowship Experience. And this is basically what it'll look like. It'll have links to about the clinical fellowship, the duration, the qualifications and responsibilities for both you and for your mentor, completion of the clinical fellowship, and applying for ASHA certification. So, again, the PowerPoint will take you directly to those links. Okay, and then finally it's the completion of application for ASHA certification and membership. So, step 1 on their little chain.
Apply for certification anytime before, during, or after your clinical fellowship experience. Applying gives you access to amazing benefits, like ASHA's Gift to the Grad program and the NISLA to ASHA conversion discount.
The LSU application code is going to be RA0112. And as the video showed, you can make application anytime. Okay, to receive the certification standards verification form needed from LSU, whether that's the new electronic verification or the paper form that we give you, you must complete the LSU exit interview, which is an online link. So you'll be sent this link from our office, and you have to complete feedback on our program on this exit interview. Complete the contact information form and send your praxis scores to LSU. So these are bits of information that we need. We need that exit interview, how to contact you when you aren't using your LSU email anymore, and you have to send us your praxis scores. If you don't send us those 3 things, then we won't verify either electronically or in paper that you have completed the program from LSU. These are things that we need because ASHA does site visits from us, and they need evidence that we are actually evaluating our program, including feedback from our graduates. So I won't sign the verification form either electronically or on paper if we don't have that information from you. And then, of course, you need to pass all of your courses. Okay, so the online application is also on the ASHA website. So you complete and submit your online application along with, of course, your money. So dues and fees, and it's quite expensive, and we'll talk about that in a minute. All academic coursework and clinical practicum must be completed before beginning the CF experience. If any coursework or practicum is incomplete, which includes prerequisites like basic biology, chemistry, or physics, and core coursework, the hours completed toward your CF experience will not count toward your minimum of 1,260 hours you need in your CF experience. So basically it's, pay attention to the information that you have to have completed before you make your application. And there's a link to the application form. Okay, so you're going to begin by using ASHA's online application. You log into your ASHA account and enter the CF experience details. Once that's done, the mentors will receive an email requesting that they verify and complete the documentation of their CF mentor portals. So they have to put that they, verify that they are certified, that they've taken the supervision courses, et cetera, and that they are willing to serve as your mentor. Verification must be completed within 90 days of the end of the CF experience. Completing this document online replaces the clinical fellowship rating form. So there's a PDF version of what the rating form looks like, and you will have a similar form, and the mentor will have a similar form to complete online. All right, we said it's expensive. The initial to ASHA conversion discount is a discount of $225 off the initial dues and fees, which is $511. The conversion discount is a benefit from ASHA exclusively for national members. So if you've been a national member of the NISHLA group, not just the local chapter, but the national membership chapter, and you've paid your dues for the last 2 years, including the semester that you graduate, then you'll get a discount of $225 off. So you will have had to have paid some of that already in the NISHLA dues, but you will have a discount as well. Okay, so you have to be a national member the year before and the year of the master's or doctoral graduation, and it's applied when you submit an application for membership and certification. The application for ASHA membership and certification must arrive before August 31st up to the year after graduation. So you've got a year to use this conversion discount. And those are the links that talk about these issues.
Today, we're going to talk about how you can save money with NISHLA. If you're like many grad school students, you probably feel like you're carrying the weight of the financial world. Let NISHLA ease some of that load and save you money with the NISHLA to ASHA conversion. It's a no-brainer. It costs $511 for the initial dues and fees of ASHA membership and certification. Use the NISHLA to ASHA conversion discount and you'll save $225. Getting the conversion discount is easy, but you do have to take some steps to qualify. First, apply for national membership in NISHLA. If you haven't already, do it now. Make sure you renew your national membership every year, especially the year you graduate. Maintain your current information, such as your degree, email, and postal address, in the NISHLA ASHA database. And don't wait until after you finish your clinical fellowship. Apply for ASHA membership and certification immediately. Do these 4 steps and you'll get the NISHLA to ASHA conversion.
Okay. There's also the ASHA Members Gift to the Grad program. There's a link to this. When you join ASHA between May 1st and August 31st, you're eligible for the Gifts to the Grad program. Entitles you for up to 20 months of membership and certification for the price of 12 months, including the discounted dues we offer you. So basically, instead of having to pay again after 12 months, then you get up to 20 months with one ASHA payment. Okay, step 2.
Choose where you want to work as a clinical fellow, from schools, hospitals, private clinics, and more. The choices are endless. Once you've found a facility, confirm that you'll be evaluating and treating individuals with speech and language disorders, and that a clinical fellowship mentor will be assigned to you. Be sure to verify online that your mentor holds an active CCC-SLP certification. Make sure you have enough direct patient contact covering all segments outlined on the Clinical Fellowship Report and Rating Form.
So this means you need to find a job. ASHA provides an excellent 40-minute video on preparing for the SLP interview. So there's the link, and I highly recommend that you review that video before you go on your job interviews. You also want to make sure that when you do your job interview, you ask if they have somebody who can serve as your mentor during your CF year. Otherwise, you'll have to find your own mentor. Many of the programs and places where you apply do have people available, but you need to ask and make sure that they have taken the supervisor course. Okay, state licensure.
Many states require provisional or temporary licensure in order to practice. Familiarize yourself with your state's requirements to obtain the necessary license.
ASHA helps you here once again. If you follow that state licensure requirements link, it'll take you to this page where they have the updated information on all of the states and what's required for licensure in each of those states. So when you go to that ASHA site, each of these will be an active link, and you can just click on the link of the state that you're interested. Step 4, setting expectations.
Discuss expectations of your clinical fellowship experience with your mentor and identify your goals. Confirm that your mentor will complete 18 direct and 18 indirect hours of observation. Familiarize yourself with ASHA's Code of Ethics and understand the responsibilities of you and your mentor.
Okay, so the clinical fellow and your mentor will determine your outcomes and your performance levels within 4 weeks of initiating your CF. So during that first month, you have to sit down and map out this plan. You must each retain documentation of the agreed upon outcomes and performance levels. Your guidance should be adequate throughout the certification period to permit the CF to achieve the stated outcomes. So this person is making a commitment to help you achieve those goals. And the guidance they provide must ensure that you can function independently by the completion of the certification period. At the university level, you're trained to be competent in these wide branches of information. So you have to be competent in pediatrics through adulthood. You have to be competent in all of these different disorders, etc., across the spectrum. But in a job, you're likely to become more of a specialist. So if you are at a voice center, then you're going to become more independent in the voice area. If you're in an adult facility, then you'll become more professional and competent in the areas of adult. And likewise, if you're in a school or a private clinic that serves school-age children, then you're going to be more competent in those areas. So that's what the CF is all about. It's saying that in your chosen area of work, this person is going to be there to mentor and guide you in that specific area so that after a year, so it's basically an internship. So after that year, then you'll be independent and able to function independently in that particular setting. Okay, so you have to be engaged in clinical service delivery or clinical research. So it means that you have to be giving direct services to clients. So this can't be some administrative job, or it can't be a research position where you're not interacting with clients. Whether you're running subjects or whether you're doing clinical service delivery, it has to be engaged in giving some sort of treatment, whether that's assessment or intervention with clients. Okay, this setting also must foster the continued growth and integration of your knowledge and skills that you began as a student. It must be within ASHA's current scope of practice. At least 80% of your major responsibilities must be direct client or patient contact, consultations, record keeping, and administrative duties. So 20% of your job might be other kinds of things. If you're in a schools, you might have some, assignments in terms of recess or committee work, etc. So 80% of your major responsibilities have to be directly involved with the client and the record keeping, consultations, and administrative duties related to clients. You have to have the equivalent of 36 weeks of full-time clinical practice. That doesn't mean you need to be working full-time. We have doctoral students who get their CFs and it might take them 3 years because they're doing it part-time rather than full-time, but it has to be the equivalent. So minimum of 35 hours per week in direct client, patient contact and consultations, etc. You can't count more than 35 hours, nor can you count less than 35 hours as full-time. They must be relevant to bona fide clinical work. So the total of the hours is no less than 1,260 hours. That's 35 hours a week times 36 weeks. You also must accumulate this within 48 months of the beginning date of the experience. So that's 4 years. So you have 4 years if you're part-time. Okay, so if you're a doctoral student, for example, and you're working 5 hours a week, at least 4 hours must be consist of direct clinical activities. If you're working part-time and you've got a 15-hour work week, then at least 12 of those hours must be direct clinical contact. If you're working full-time, a 35-hour work week, at least 28 of those hours must be direct clinical activities. Less than 5 hours or more than 35 hours do not count. So it does not meet the requirement and may not be counted toward your clinical fellowship year. And if you work more than 35 hours a week, then that does not allow you to shorten your time to less than 36 weeks. You have to have at least 36 weeks of experience, no matter how many hours per day you put in. And if you don't complete it within 48 months, then you are required to reapply and complete the certification that meets the standards at the time of reapplication. So if you started under 2014 standards and it's now 2020 and you haven't completed it, then you need to now start it all over again under the 2020 standards. Okay, additional mentoring requirements. The supervisor must have 18 other monitoring hours of activities. At least 6 must be conducted during each third of the CF experience. So basically 6 of the hours have to be in the first third of the year, 6 in the middle of the year, and 6 at the 8 of the year, minimally. These can include evaluation of your reports that are written, conferences between you and the clinical mentor, discussions with professional colleagues, etc. And it may be executed by correspondence, emails, letters, telephone, or viewing of video or audio tapes. So not all of the mentoring activities have to be on-site direct observation by your clinical mentor. But they do have to conduct some on-site live observations. At least 6 on-site observations must be conducted during each third of the clinical fellowship experience. They must consist of watching you engaged in screening, evaluating, assessment, or treatment of clients. So this is the tracking supervisory form. So you both write down the dates of the observation, what they observed, comments or feedback, the number of hours observed, and was the contact direct or indirect. So this does not have to be turned into ASHA, but if you're audited, then you basically need to have these kinds of records of the activities that you both engaged in.
You and your mentor are required to complete the clinical fellowship report and rating form throughout your clinical fellowship. Confirm with your mentor that all core skills will be addressed and evaluated.
Okay, so once again, same information. You must engage in no fewer than 36 supervisory activities, including 18 on-site observations of the direct contact. 1 hour is equal to 1 on-site observation. So when you're talking about 18 on-site observations, that means 18 hours distributed across the year. 6 at the beginning, 6 in the middle, 6 at the end. A maximum of 6 on-site observations may be accrued in one day. So that does not mean that your mentor has to be available to come to your work site and observe you on 18 different occasions. They can do it once at the beginning for a 6-hour day, once in the middle for a 6-hour day, once at the end for a 6-hour day, or they can do, 2 times for 3 hours each, etc. It just has to total 18 on-site observations and be distributed across your CF year. This is the clinical skills inventory form. So it looks at areas such as screening, case history, evaluation, interviewing, interpretation, treatment plan, intervention strategies, materials and instrumentation, progress monitoring, adaptation to meet client needs, direct and indirect service activities, records, administrative and policy issues, and regulations. So you'll be evaluated on each one of those things. And you'll see that it's a 5-point scale. With the lowest level, the CF requires supervisory guidance to accurately match and adapt screening procedures to populations and to select appropriate screening criteria. They may demonstrate difficulty in administrating and scoring screening instruments, so this is maximum guidance is still needed, as opposed to the 5 CF independently and accurately matches and adapts screening procedures to all populations, selects appropriate screening criteria, administers and scores screening instruments, efficiently interprets results and makes appropriate recommendations. CF seeks super guidance if needed. So your supervisor is going to rate you based on some of the initial observations on each of these areas on this scale from 1 to 5, and then at the end you're going to together sit down and rate yourself on those areas. Once again, so you're hoping that you're going to have improvements from maybe a 2 or a 3 up to, a 4 and a 5. All right, all the information is once again on the ASHA website. So the clinical fellowship forms is going to be at that link that I showed you earlier, the Guide to ASHA Fellowship Experiences, including this speech pathology clinical rating report and form and the speech pathology clinical fellowship skills inventory. So those are PDF forms, but you're going to submit the results online. Okay, what if you have multiple mentors or multiple settings in your CF?
You can change mentors and settings during your clinical fellowship, as well as select multiple settings to meet the maximum 35 hours per week. Document any changes in mentor, setting, or average hours worked per week on a separate form. Meet
Okay, so just remember that if you're working in two places, part-time each, or if you change your mentor in the middle of the CF year, that's allowed. You just have to make sure that you're going to complete a separate CF reported rating form for each change or for each supervisor that you work under.
your mentor at least once during each segment for feedback and review. Take notes and focus on areas that need improvement. Ask questions. Use your mentor as a resource. After all, they were once a clinical fellow too. During feedback sessions, you and your mentor must both sign each segment. Assess your scores. You must earn a rating of 3 or better in the final segment for each of the core skills to qualify for certification. Complete a minimum of 36 weeks work, totaling no less than 1,260 hours. Review.
Okay, and again, that's just a look at the forms. As we said, it is a 5-point rating scale. Read the descriptors carefully. Consider the following 4 factors when applicable in relationship to the skill being rated. Accuracy, the degree to which the clinical fellow performs a skill without error. Consistency, the degree to which the clinical fellow performs a skill at the same level of proficiency across cases. Independence, the degree to which the clinical fellow performs a skill in a self-directed manner. And supervisory guidance, the degree to which the clinical fellow seeks consultations when needed. Nobody knows everything. No matter how long you've worked, you are going to have occasions when you need to seek information or consultations from others, whether those be other speech pathologists, PTs, OTs, physicians, psychologists, etc.
The clinical fellowship report and rating form to make sure no areas are left blank. All information is accurate, and you and your mentor have signed each required area. Make a copy of the form for your records. Mail your form to ASHA, which will be reviewed once all other components of your certification application are received.
This is accurate except for the mailing. We no longer mail our forms to ASHA, but rather it's done online. Okay, and this is just an example of the application form. Once you've accumulated the required 1,260 hours, then online you're going to submit the report and rating form, including the clinical skills inventory that we saw on the 5-point rated scale. This has to be completed by both you and your mentoring speech-language pathologist.
Evaluation and processing of your certification application, including the clinical fellowship report and rating form, will take approximately 6 weeks. Any missing pieces will delay processing. ASHA will inform you when you have been awarded certification. Once you receive written confirmation, you may begin signing your name with your CCC SLP designation. If you have any questions, please contact ASHA's Action Center.
Okay, so it is an actual certification or certificate that you can purchase. Most of us don't. Now, once you have your C's does not mean that you are home free. For the rest of your career, you're going to have to maintain your C's. You must accumulate 30 contact hours of professional development over each 3-year period. So it's averaging about 10 per year. but it doesn't all have to be, it doesn't necessarily for ASHA have to be 10 per year. Be sure that you're coordinating this with your licensure for the state. The licensing agency might require 10 hours per year. So ASHA's is 30 hours across a 3-year period. Basically, you can go to a national conference or you can go to a state conference. State conferences basically are designed to make it affordable to hear speakers from across the nation or across the world. So they basically bring in people from who are current and top in the field right now to give talks that might be a half a day talk or a 2-hour talk, etc. So you can hear from some of the biggest names in the country because your state association brings them in. They also have, opportunities for local people to talk about some of the ideas that they're doing in intervention and treatment and assessment, etc. There are many, many private companies that provide opportunities. Universities provide opportunities, and the CAPSID provides sometimes free programs that you can sign up for and complete and obtain your CEUs. You can also use some of the hours from the schools for example, some inter-services that the schools might provide. Some of those hours can be used towards those contact hours for both licensure and for ASHA. But the point is that our field is changing so dramatically and so quickly with new research and new areas that we take on as speech-language pathologists that you have to stay current. And so that's the purpose of these 30 hours of contact hours in professional development. Remember, one of those hours must be in ethics. Individuals are subject to a random review of their professional development activities, so you have to have the evidence that you actually attended, the professional development that you said you did. And if renewal of certification is not accomplished within the 3-year period, then your certification will lapse. This means if you decide that you're going to stay home and have a family and you think, oh, I don't need to pay those expensive ASHA dues, I don't really need to get those professional development hours, I'll pick it back up again when my kids are a little bit older, you'll find out that you have lost your certification. So at that point, you would have to start the certification process all over again under the standards that are current at that time. And it can mean you might have to retake the praxis, you might have to take some of the 400 hours of clinic under some sort of a university certification. So the point is, do not let this lapse. You never know what's going to happen in your life, and you might need to go back to work, and you might need that certification. And so you need to keep it up in terms of both maintaining the contact hours of professional development as well as your ASHA fees. Okay, that's the issue that we just talked about. The first maintenance interval will be between January 1st following graduation and December 2 years later. So, for example, if you graduate January 1st, 2020, if you graduated in May 2019, then your first interval will be January 2020 through December 31st, 2021. All right, well, I hope that gives you a good understanding of what's expected for ASHA certification and how to go through the process. The ASHA website is filled with information. I've tried to provide you with the links and some sources of information. All right. Good luck and happy certification.